if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. A GB News exclusive on the channel Migrant Crisis. Expect things to get very, very bad. More detail coming up shortly. Also,
we know what we're for. We're for controlled borders. We're for promoting genuine economic growth. We're for helping the little guy. We're about trying to restore some trust in politics.
Does Reform's manifesto actually add up, though? Plus,
Starmer is the only other person who can conceivably walk into Downing Street.
former Chancellor Quazi Quatang is live with me in this studio at 10 p.m. with some revelations about the Tory party's election campaign. Also, I speak to an eyewitness who saw police deliberately smash a cow up to 5 times with their car. Were they justified, or is this sickening animal abuse? And
the Labour, you will be better off and your energy bills will be cut.
Well, how much will they be cut by the end of a first year in government under Labour?
Former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon is live. Couple of things here. Is Labour lying about your money, but are they also covering up? And why is the media losing its mind over football fans having fun? And
tap.
Give it a good tap. Yes, that's
and
what
I know everybody watching the news channel right now is going to be...
Does anybody else find this Ed Davey loving absolutely ridiculous? On my panel tonight, it is Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and Labour supporter Benjamin Butterworth, and founder of Global Britain and Conservative backer Aman Bagal. Oh, yes. And what's going on here?
I'm stupid in joking on.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. A huge problem is hurtling towards Britain. Next.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening to you. Reform UK has been launching its election contract with the British people today in South Wales, describing it as a serious plan to reshape the way the country is run. Reform leader Nigel Farage said he wouldn't call it a manifesto because too many voters have lost confidence in that term. Mr Farage instead outlined his plans to freeze all non-essential immigration and take Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights. Reform UK would also introduce a new tax for employers which choose to hire workers from overseas. And earnings under £20,000 a year would be tax-free, with extra funds made available by abolishing the government's net zero targets. Mr Farage says he wants to restore trust in British politics.
The great British public who want some hope, who want some aspiration, those at the lower end of the income scale who can't make ends meet, those who are trapped on benefits, and I mean trapped, they can't get off because you work for more than 16 hours a week, they take your benefits away. We're aiming at those people, we're aiming at people who would like well-paid jobs in the manufacturing sector.
Nigel Farage. Meanwhile, a Press Association poll of polls reflecting party ratings over the last 7 days gives Labour the lead with 41%, ahead of the Conservatives on 21 and Reform on 15. But the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says he'll fight on and he intends to win.
There's still 2.5 weeks to go in this election. I'm fighting hard for every vote because I believe we can win. And there's a very clear choice at this election. It's having your taxes cut by the Conservatives or facing significant tax rises with the Labour Party. Now, we know now the manifestos are all out. Everyone's cards are on the table. With the Conservatives, we will cut your taxes at every stage of your life. And in contrast with Labour, the tax burden is going up to the highest we've seen in our country's history.
Rishi Sunak. Now, a new bill to prevent breakaway leagues in football and support lower league clubs could be introduced if Labour wins the next general election. In 2021, 6 major English clubs announced they'd join a new European Super League, which was quickly scrapped after a public backlash. Well, in the same year, a fan-led review called for action to prevent it happening again, but that was rejected by the Conservatives. Labour also suggested a 10% transfer levy between the Premier League and foreign clubs to raise funds to support the football pyramid in the UK. And lastly, Sir Rod Stewart appears to have been booed during a performance in Germany after he showed support for Ukraine. The singer performed while an image of the Ukrainian flag was projected behind him as he belted out his 1991 hit Rhythm of My Heart, which he describes as a war song. But Sir Rod's show of support provoked loud booing from the city of Leipzig and the crowds that were there watching him. It comes after Germany reportedly vetoed an EU plan to apply fresh sanctions on Russia's lucrative gas sector. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, a very good evening to you. It's just gone 9 p.m. on Monday, June the 17th. And I kickstart this week with a GB News Channel Migrant exclusive. There is expected to be a huge surge in illegal immigration in the Channel in the coming days and weeks. So far this year, around 11,400 people have crossed. That is up 18% on this time last year. We can reveal now that people smugglers in France are telling illegal migrants across the continent that this is their last chance to get to Britain before EU countries arrest and deport them. They are now fast-tracking people to the Calais beaches, and they have bumped their prices up to £10,000 per person. Illegal migrants are being told this is last chance saloon, and we are on the brink of some kind of Channel migrant gold rush to the land of milk and honey that is Great Britain. Smugglers are now telling migrants that the Identity and Democracy Party in the European Parliament will outlaw them, blockade their entrances into France, destroy migrant camps, and then ban them from leaving France and heading back through Europe. So their only opportunity is really to get to Britain and get to Britain quick. A French prosecution source, speaking exclusively to us here at GB News, told us this. All sorts of rumours about migrants essentially being banned if there's a change of power being spread. The smugglers are very clever. They know how to manipulate and control the migrants wanting to cross. They are being told they face immediate arrest and then the crossings themselves will be banned. It is basically last chance saloon. They know deep down it is far more complex than that, but they spread this deceit and it creates a rush. The weather looks like it's on the up and will improve. So we are going to see an influx. That is the quote. Well, it is likely, therefore, that in the weeks following the general election, Britain will see a massive uptick in Channel crossings. Well, this news comes as the Labour Party looks set to allow 90,000 illegal immigrants who were scheduled to be sent to Rwanda to actually claim asylum in Britain. They could start that process just a couple of weeks after coming to power, reportedly. Now, Labour say this could save us £6 to £8 million a day, or £2 billion and so pounds a year, and that they're going to smash the gangs by using terrorism laws. So they say, look, it won't come to this. But the fact is, though, that within weeks of potentially taking office, the Labour Party could be forced to deal with a Channel migrant gold rush to Britain. How do you think that they'll handle it? Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. I've got the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and founding chairman of Global Britain UK, Aman Bagal. So, Carol, that exclusive is that we can reveal here on GB News that people smugglers are now fast-tracking migrants through continental Europe, telling them that there is no way back for them and the only way for them to remain in Europe is to get to Britain, and that they have to do that as quickly as possible. Do you think the Labour government, if we do get one, would be able to deal with that?
Of course, because this has always been Labour's plan. They don't want borders anyway. They think immigration is racist. You know, when Starmer was DPP, remember, he actually said that immigration law was inherently racist. So they don't want to close the doors to people coming here legally or illegally. And, you know, it's not actually an immigration policy to say to everyone who comes, you can stay. That's not a policy. And what it does is put a great big fat advert out there saying, come to soft touch Britain.
Well, unfortunately, what we do have now, and that is what that exclusive reveals, is there is an advert. There is that massive advert out there now, and they are saying to these people who are in Calais, and not just there, but also anywhere in France and anywhere around that area in Europe, that if you stay in mainland Europe, you're going to be deported. The best thing for you to do is to get to Britain ASAP. You heard it from a security source there, speaking exclusively to GBNews, Benjamin, that we are about to get a massive influx. You know, is that not a concern for potentially incoming Labour government?
Of course, yeah, it'd be a concern for any government. But, I mean, I'd say two things. One is that if it's the case that they found a way to actually stop that, then it makes you wonder what's been going on for the last couple of years. You know, if there's something that makes the smugglers believe that it will actually end their business model, then why wasn't it already happening? But the flip side is that you're inclined to take the word of the smugglers on this. I mean, this could be a supply and demand matter to push up their prices.
I understand what you're saying, but it's not us taking the word. It relies on the illegal immigrants taking the word of the people smugglers, right? And they will have seen the way that Europe's voted. That will be quite plausible to them that they need to get to Britain now. And I just wonder if that plays into this idea that we might be about to get a government that is now out of step with the rest of Europe, and we actually become the destination, not just one of many destinations, but literally the destination for these people.
Indeed. Well, look, this has been the way for quite a few years now. Let's not forget, first of all, every single illegal economic migrant comes across on a dinghy is a slap in the face of every legal migrant who has jumped through hoops to get here in the right way. But more than that, we've paid £700 million to the French since 2014 to stem this flow of illegal economic migration. And what have they done? They escort people to the middle of the Channel, and our Royal Navy, our Coast Guard pick them up in the middle of the way. I've been long saying for the last year that the only way to end this, and even if we do this for 1 week, it'll end, is to drop every single person back on the French coast. What are the French going to do? Go to war with us? Macron is a Finnish dud.
Yeah. And I think what's going to happen is, you know, this Identity and Democracy group, this is Marine Le Pen's party. You know, they might well do the things that we're being told about. You know, destroying any camps there, arresting people, blockading entries to France. You know, that at the end of the day, that is actually going to help Britain if they're going to stop them, because they're not going to go to France, and therefore they won't come here. So it could be that actually could be a very real threat, because the point of that whole party is to stop immigration. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, and this is the idea, isn't it? That anyone who's already in Europe, and let's be honest, Benjamin, you know, they're not going to go back the other way, are they? So we are the end of the road here, really. Do you think that the Labour Party will be equipped for the visuals, potentially, of absolutely record numbers of people, some kind of, you know, dinghy-based armada, really, coming across the Channel just weeks after they come to office, if they do win?
I mean, I think the British public is intelligent enough to figure out that happening in the first couple of weeks isn't going to be the Labour government's fault. It's going to be a consequence of exactly what you're describing here.
No, hang on. What would be their fault is if they give amnesty virtually to 90,000 migrants that were destined to go to Rwanda. That absolutely would be their fault. Except the public would be furious.
I think what Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, is saying...
What, the same guy who said, the same woman who said refugees welcome?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
refugees are welcome, of course they are. But the Labour Party, I think, has said that some of the people coming from countries like India and Bangladesh, where they're least likely to be given refugee status, will be fast-tracked so that they can be sent back, so that you don't have the enormous bill of people in hotels. So that 90,000 figure isn't saying they'll get 90,000 people given refugee status, it's saying those will be the ones fast-tracked.
OK, because we are potentially now, the added kind of icing on top of this cake for us, if you want to call it that, is that at the exact moment now where people smugglers can quite legitimately say, look, Europe is finally cracking down on the migrant crisis, we could conceivably have a new government in this country that would be allowing 90,000 people who were definitely not going to be allowed to claim asylum in this country to maybe be able to claim asylum in this country. And that's before any of this big surge that we're expecting in the coming days and weeks.
Look, we're in the last throes of this election campaign. In a few weeks' time, we might have a Labour government who is going to do a deal with the European Commission, with the European Union, which, let's be honest, the European Commission has been demanding this of all countries in Europe, that they take in a certain quota of the illegal economic migrants coming in on the southern coast of Europe. Orban has been resisting it, Maloney has been resisting it, until recently the Polish have been resisting it. But can we really see Starmer resisting it? No, he's going to sign up for it.
He's actually said, he's made absolutely clear, he has said publicly that we do not take our fair share of migrants from the rest of Europe.
Exactly.
So that's going to happen.
Well, another aspect of this is, again, I'll just say, you know, we had a French security official on the record talking to us here at GB News saying you are absolutely about to get a huge influx of people coming across the channel. So that is their view. I would argue, Benjamin, if the people smugglers have put their prices up as, you know, the last chance to get to, you know, the land of milk and honey, anyone paying £10,000 to get in a dinghy is not a proper asylum seeker.
No, they're not a refugee. They're a legal economic migrant. It's obvious.
What do you think about? What would you say to that? It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think.
I've never spent 10k on a holiday.
Well, there you go.
Exactly.
But look, I mean, I think Keir Starmer is right. I don't think he's used the term I don't think he said the words "we don't take our fair
He
share."
has. They were exactly his words. Our fair share.
But what I know is his policy is to say that we should take a quota, and I think that's a much more sensible way to do with it, because you can't pretend that we're not going to have this situation, that we're not going to have refugees. You are, and I think we should prepare for a certain number.
Well, that's the thing. They're not refugees.
This as a foregone conclusion. They are not refugees.
They're not refugees.
Economic migrants, and there's a hell of it. We've got half of North Africa wanting to come and live here. I don't.
But why do we?
I would too, but it can't happen.
Why do we in the UK owe anything more than spending the second biggest aid budget already at source? Why are we displacing internationally displaced people even more than they're already displaced? It's not right.
OK, all right. Look, I think, again, just to underline all of this, we have to recognise the fact that a lot of these human traffickers, you know, vile, disgusting people as they are business people, aren't they? They are incredibly shrewd, incredibly entrepreneurial. They do not miss a trick. And it has been mere moments since we saw the EU elections on the continent there and the fallout from it and the way that Europe is turning. And they are weaponising that and using a campaign of information to the illegal migrants to get to Britain right now. And they are going to try to fast-track a load of people, not just from France, but from right across the continent. We have the French security source to back that up. We can expect, apparently, a huge surge in the coming weeks and months. Is that a massive concern for you? Is that a big concern? Many people will be saying, well, hang on a minute, the Conservatives probably wouldn't handle it any better than Labour, and I do understand that, but get your views coming in. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come, the nation is outraged after a 10-month-old cow is flattened by a police vehicle. But did the coppers have any other choice? We speak to an eyewitness of this incident. He's got a fascinating story to tell, a lot of detail that the police do not want you to know about, by the way, plus retired police officer Norman Brennan for his view. But up next, Chief Executive of Care Not Killing, Dr Gordon MacDonald, goes head-to-head with Rabbi Jonathan Romaine on whether or not Britain should legalise assisted dying. Keir Starmer wants to. Apparently, Rishi Sunak isn't opposed to it either. So no matter what happens on July the 4th, it looks as though Britain will be a drastically different place. Legalised assisted dying appears to be on the way. Is that a good thing? Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, we've got to
very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, this pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar, we used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with. She was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running
Thank you. Not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, you know, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. It's midday. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, coming up, was it right for police officers to mow down a runaway cow in their patrol car in a bid to protect the public? I'm going to be talking to an eyewitness to that event. He has some absolutely astonishing revelations for you. But time now for our head-to-head. This time next year, Britain could be a very different country. 16-year-olds could be given the vote, swathes of private schools could be shut down. That will have an impact on our state education system. There could well be more trans people in women's changing rooms. And it's made ever easier for them to change gender. But one of the most controversial policies of all, actually, legalised assisted dying, is receiving cross-party support. So the Prime Minister says he's not opposed to people, essentially, helping to end their own lives, as long as there are safeguards to protect the vulnerable. He told reporters at the G7 yesterday, I'm not opposed to it in principle, and it's a question of making sure the safeguards are in place and are effective. Well, Sir Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has pledged that Parliament will debate and vote on changing assisted dying laws if Labour wins the next general election. So with assisted dying likely to come to Britain, regardless of who wins the keys to number 10, should it be legalised in the UK? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GB News and go and vote in our poll. The results to follow shortly. But going head-to-head on this now are Dr Gordon MacDonald as Chief Executive of Care Not Killing and Rabbi Dr Jonathan Romain, National Chair of Dignity in Dying. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Dr Gordon, I'll start with you. And I actually think you have quite an interesting point to make, don't you, about whether or not there might be some hidden meaning behind assisted dying laws, cost-related issues. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously lots of issues involved in the debate, and it's much more complicated than is presented as a simple choice or not. But the issue is that many people who are vulnerable come under pressure to end their lives. People don't get access to the healthcare or social care that they need. And the underlying driver is often driven by financial costs of care and that care not being available. And we see that in Canada, where the Canadian Parliamentary Budget Office even produced a report where they said it would save hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and people are not getting the care that they need. Even the Canadian Federal Disability Minister said that it was easier to get assisted dying or assisted suicide or euthanasia than it was to get a wheelchair. So that being the case, you know, that just shows how dangerous the whole system can become very quickly. And it's not that people would argue that that's the reason to change the law, but it is the practice which develops because these things take a life of their own, basically.
Well, like all things, there could be a hidden agenda behind it. And Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Romain, I'll come to you on this. There are obviously very high-profile cases of people who I think many people would argue justifiably want to end the pain and suffering that they're in. But is there not a concern that actually a government could look at this and thinking this is a way of, and if you'll excuse me for saying this, but I think it's true, getting old people off the books?
No, not at all. There is an agenda, and it's called compassion. Because I'm sure you, and certainly a lot of GB News listeners and viewers, will know somebody who's died painfully. They're terminally ill, they're in great agony, they could be suffering from cancer, motor neuron, Parkinson's. Unfortunately, there are just so many horrible diseases, and they would like to let go, rather than face more agony. So, actually, this will be welcomed by a lot of people up and down the country to have the option, not the obligation. I mean, if people want to carry on to their last breath, great, they should have every support. And, by the way, Dignity in Dying is 100% behind better palliative care, better funding. But there comes a point where some people say, I'm in agony. And, you know, what advantage is there from us insisting that they carry on in pain? This is about ending suffering. It's very religious, actually. We want to have... We want to say there's nothing sacred about suffering.
Well, can I come back to you on that? Because, look, that's going to be my next question to you, actually, which is, as a religious figure yourself, how do you square that? But I'll go to Dr. Gordon now on this. How do you respond to that? You know, what possible justification can there be, Dr. Gordon, to live in a first world country where somebody who's writhing around in agony, or let's say they've got locked-in syndrome or one of those horrific things, or they know they get a diagnosis and they know what their life is going to look like and it's no life at all. What justification could there be for making them continue to suffer?
Well, the first question you have to ask is what sort of care are they getting? I mean, people shouldn't be writhing around in agony. With palliative care available, that wouldn't be the case in the vast bulk of cases. And normally the suffering that they have isn't actually due to their physical symptoms. In any case, it's emotional distress. But the question then is, why are we not funding palliative care properly in this country, or even the NHS generally? There are huge increases in demand. We have an ageing population. The demand for palliative care is likely to go up by 25%, and yet the government's not even currently funding in line with inflation. So this is where the danger arises, that you may well find a pressure within the system to clear beds or to save money in some way.
I'm just going to push you on this slightly, if that's OK. I mean, I do have it in my notes here that you do seem to think that there's been some kind of informal analysis on cost savings done by the Treasury, and you worry whether or not poorer people might be pressed to go down this route. Is that what you believe?
Well, that's our understanding. The government need to clarify whether that's the case or not. And, you know, really, Rishi Sunak should publish those figures and let us see if the Treasury has actually done that. You know, because Matthew Parris just a few weeks ago was saying in the Times, you know, that for him, he would welcome the fact if people felt that they were a burden and would opt for this. And we had two Scottish academics a few years ago saying, well, the cost savings are the elephant in the room in the debate. You know, these voices are there, and, you know, if there has been any sort of assessment within government, then we need to know what that conclusion is.
Well, absolutely. Look, I do think whatever side of the fence on this particular debate anybody's on, I think it would be nice to know, wouldn't it, if actually there was a financial implication that was informing some of the political discourse here. But, yes, Rabbi, I'll come back to you on this. OK, so, you know, educate me here, because as far as I was concerned, suicide was a... what is it? Would you call it a mortal sin? I don't know if it's mortal sin if you're already dead. Is that the right phrase for it? But, you know, it's a sin, isn't it? Suicide, you can't go around killing yourself. So why are you in favour of this?
Well, there's a very big difference here between suicide and assisted dying. Suicide, yes, you're not supposed to kill yourself, because if you did, you might otherwise have lived for another 20 or 30 years. But assisted dying is only where someone is terminally ill. In other words, they're lying anyway. They're going to, and the law would be within 6 months. So they might have 3 months or 3 weeks to go.
Is that the religious law, though?
Already.
You know, is that does God approve of that? Because if you press the button and, you know, end your own life, Is that not just the same as just, you know, doing it any other way?
No, because you're not shortening life. What you're doing is shortening death, and you're shortening the pain and the agony of death. And if that isn't religious, what is? Oh, and by the way, let me just come back on what George said. This document about saving money, that's fantasy. That, you know, I never heard of that, never seen that. And by the way, the other thing, palliative care, a great supporter, second to none in it, but only about 5 or 6 weeks ago, the Health and Social Care Committee of MPs admitted that there are many people who palliative care can't help. It can help a lot of people, but it really can't help everybody. And by the way, don't just believe me. Look at the British Medical Association. They have shifted their position from being against assisted dying to being neutral and giving people a choice. Not just the BMA, but also the Royal College of Nurses, Physicians, Surgeons, so many other of the Royal Colleges. In other words, it's not just political opinion that's shifting, medical opinion is. Plus, of course, as you well know, the polls show that 75%.
Well, on
amazing.
On that note, it's a perfect time for us to draw it to a conclusion, because we're about to reveal a poll of our own. Can I just say a massive thank you to both of you on this? And we will reignite this, because in this general election campaign, there's a heck of a lot of mud that gets thrown at the wall every single day. It's easy to lose things and miss things. But this, as of today, is apparently something that is definitely going to happen in Britain. If Labour are a favour of it, which they are, and Rishi Sunak isn't opposed to it, well, you know, no matter which way it tends to go on July the 4th, it looks as though assisted dying is almost certainly coming to Britain. So thank you both of you for getting in touch on that one. It's Dr Gordon MacDonald, Chief Executive of Care Not Killing, and Rabbi Dr Jonathan Remain, National Chair of Dignity in Dying. Where are you on this, OK? What do you think at home? Should assisted dying be legalised? Scott says 100%. People who are of sound mind should be allowed the choice to a dignified goodbye. OK, cool. You know, I get that. My concern is the slippery slope argument. Does this then turn into depressed teenagers? Because I think that's a problem if it does. Brenda says this. An assisted dying law, however well-intended, would alter society's attitude towards the elderly, seriously ill and disabled. It's a dangerous road to go down. I worry about that. Vicky says, I'm extremely torn on this issue. When quality of life is at rock bottom due to pain and no prospects of improvement, it does seem cruel to refuse, but without a doubt it will be abused and twisted. I know, this is the problem. Right, look, the poll. 64% of you agree that assisted dying should be legalised in the UK. 36% of you said that it shouldn't be. Fascinating debate, that, if not slightly morbid. But anyway, coming up, Reform UK have launched their election manifesto, their contract, as they call it. And immigration is, unsurprisingly, a leading issue. The Spectator's political correspondent James Heal joins me to dissect this document later in the show. But first, well, now, this really is a revelation. So, after an escaped cow was repeatedly rammed by a police car in Surrey, the nation has been a bit divided over the ethics of this incident. Well, I thought I'd try and clear things up. I've got an eyewitness on. So he saw some things that, frankly, he can't unsee, and he's got a few revelations for you about what really went on. Plus, retired police officer Norman Brennan to delve into the incident that has split the nation. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. It will be another bright start to Tuesday. However, it's going to cloud over through the day, and there's a risk of some pretty heavy showers once again. Low pressure still quite close to northern areas, so that's bringing that shower risk, particularly across the north and east through today, but that shower risk will move over to the northwest through tomorrow. So a few showers still to come for eastern Scotland through tonight as well. It will remain fairly cloudy and drizzly across northern areas of Scotland, but elsewhere for the rest of the UK, it'll be a clear and dry night with the risk of some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, and temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees for most towns and cities. So bright start to the day on Tuesday, potentially a bit of mist and fog around, but it's the far north of Scotland that's going to see the cloudiest of skies, and with that northerly wind, it's going to be feeling not a lot like summer at all. 11 or 12 degrees at best, 9 degrees for some of us, and some quite persistent drizzly rain. Now temperatures rise as we head further south, with more in the way of sunshine to start the day. As I said, there is a chance of some mist and fog, and notice this massive rain over the near continent. That will start to approach from the south and east through Tuesday lunchtime, and we could see some heavy rain across parts of Kent and Sussex, and then towards Essex, parts of Suffolk as well later on in the day. So here it will turn potentially quite wet. We could also see some very heavy showers across western areas of Scotland as well as northwestern England. But elsewhere, a dry and fairly bright day, but a little bit cooler than today, tomorrow. Now, another bright start to come on Wednesday, and Wednesday's looking like a much brighter day by and large as well. However, we do have a weather front approaching from the north and west. That will bring thicker cloud to parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well later on in the day. But for most of us, it stays dry and bright as we head through Wednesday, Thursday and likely into Friday as well, with temperatures rising towards 24 degrees.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, still to come, Nigel Farage unveiled Reform UK's election manifesto earlier today, and The Spectator's James Hill will beam in live to scrutinise all of their policies. But first, it's time for a story that's massively split the nation, this. So Surrey police are now under investigation after an officer repeatedly rammed an escaped cow with his police vehicle on Friday night. So the 10-month-old calf had escaped from a breeding farm 5 miles from the scene of the incident in Staines-upon-Thames, swimming across a river to make her escape. This sparked a police chase that lasted for about 2 hours, apparently, culminated with the animal being repeatedly run over by police. They say due to fears that they could cause some kind of traffic incident. Well, the cow, who has apparently been named as Bo Lucy, is now recovering with her owners back at the farm, but was not offered any medical assistance at the scene and could reportedly still die of shock in the coming days. I mean, look, it's awful, this. It's awful. Shocking. Well, Kai Bennett was an eyewitness to this shocking incident. I'm very pleased to say that Kai joins me now. Kai, thank you for coming into the studio today. Could you tell us a bit about what you saw that night?
Yeah, basically, from the beginning, I was over at a friend's house and I left his at around 11, half 11, midnight, like I normally do. Walked over to mine, he doesn't live far, and I heard a commotion from a bunch of cars shouting. Obviously, I thought the worst. I thought it was a gang-related thing, so obviously, you know how London are these days. It's not very safe, especially at the time I was out. And then they started running towards me, and obviously I feared for whatever, but then they ran past me, and obviously I shouted, "What are you running from?" when I heard cow. When I turned around to see a black baby cow charging at me, and obviously I've had to jump out the way. At that point, took it upon myself to follow the cow to make sure it wasn't hit or hurt by anything else, and to get the people who were tormenting it, getting it to chase it to obviously go away.
Yeah, and so then the police were called, were they? I mean, what happened in terms of what you saw in terms of the police action?
So I was with the car for about 10 minutes, following it in and out of roads, on the phone to the police, guiding them where I was, letting them know the calf wasn't hurting anyone, causing damage to any property, just keep the situation as chill as I could. And then we got to a corner of the road where the front gardens have quite high concrete walls, and I thought, let me try and trap it in here, because it won't get out. At this point, the police pulled up. I had stopped recording on my phone to wave down the police truck, and that's when I saw the police truck full speed hit the cow first and second time.
And they actually did hit it more times than what has been doing the rounds on social media, didn't they?
Yeah, they hit it 5 times altogether, 3 in front of my own eyes and then 2 up the road near to the park where I managed to trap it.
And you just don't think there was any need for that?
No, not at all. The animal, you clearly see in every video circulating online that everyone was upset for the animal and no one was hurt. The animal didn't want to go near anyone, it just wanted to find home.
And did you try and stop the police from doing this?
I did, yes. I tried to stop the police multiple times. I was shouting, saying, I can deal with this animal, turn your lights off. That's when they were pushing me away and telling me I'm obstructing the scene and I could face being arrested and stuff like that. But obviously, my anger at that point, knowing it was a baby, having a baby myself, I couldn't sit back and watch.
So what happened then? So you got involved a bit, did you?
So after the calf had been hit 3 times, I don't know how it managed to get back up, which it did. It got up, walked down the road towards my park, where I was still being held, so I couldn't see the calf. But that's when...
Sorry, just to zone in on that then, mate. So you'd had a word with the police. They had then tried to detain you, had they?
They had tried to keep me at the scene because deep down, they knew their plan of action was to put this calf down, and they knew with me at the scene it wasn't going to happen.
Right. So they were detaining you, and then what's happened then? They've gone after you again?
They kind of took their eye off me for a bit too long, because then I slipped around and obviously made my way towards the park where I see the cow get up off the floor from being hit, obviously, the 4th and 3rd time, which I didn't see properly, make its way into the park, and then the police obviously scurried to shut all of the gates around the park and asked me if I could shut the furthest one away, which I happily did. I said, yeah, but then as I was on my way to the fence to shut it, I overheard that the gun units were coming to shoot it, so then I put myself in danger's way and jumped in the park.
So they tried to ram it with a car, as we all know, and you heard that they were basically actually planning on just shooting this cow dead.
Yeah.
And you thought that there was no need for that at all. You put yourself in a situation where, were you kind of between them and the cow, so that if they'd have shot or
yeah, I was within metres distance of the cow. So
you were so if the gun units
basically was saying, you want to shoot this cow, you go through me. You shoot me first.
I mean, it's a remarkable story. I know that not just animal rights lovers, but I think most people out there will be thinking that you're a bit of a hero for doing that. And just the final thing on this, as far as you're concerned, we know that there's a police investigation into this now. What do you want to see happen there, do you think?
I want to see what would happen to any of us if we was to hit a cow with our car. I want the right prosecution to come out of this. That man, to me, he enjoyed it, in my opinion, what he was doing. He showed not a single bit of remorse. It was like he showed psychopathic tendencies.
Gosh. All right. Well, look, it goes without saying that police officer in question will undergo a full investigation. Probably a few others involved in that incident will as well. And they're not here to defend themselves. But, Kai, can I just say a massive thank you for coming on the show. Really great to have you on that. That's Kai Bennett there. I am just going to whiz us over a little bit now to retired police officer Norman Brennan. Because, Norman, look, you're always a tremendous servant to this show and the channel as well. Do you think, with your police hat on, for want of a better phrase, that there was a justification for the way they behaved here?
Yes, there was. And can I just put Kai right straight away? Had I been the senior officer on duty at the time, and Kai had done exactly the same as the police officer had done, probably with a view of saving life or damage to other people, he would not have been prosecuted. I watched it yesterday. It went epileptic in the social media spheres. This incident apparently lasted about 2.5 hours. Ramming the cow was not the primary concern. Saving the cow, corralling it, putting it in a corner where the farmer could come and collect it was their priority. It clearly got to a stage where the cow was distressed, lost and lonely, which is very distressing to see on social media. And it got to a point, really, where I think the danger that the police saw the public in reached a stage where they had to take some sort of drastic action. So it's never nice. It's always distressing to look at it, Patrick. But can I just tell you about Devil's Advocate?
Yeah.
Right. I know the area well. It's 2 miles up the road. 316 is a 50-mile-an-hour road. The M25 is around the corner, as is the M3. Just supposing that 1 or 2 ton calf or cow run across the 316 late at night, which it was dark, and a husband, wife and a baby were driving along the 316, and out of nowhere, it pulled in front of them. They either hit it or swerved to miss it and hit a tree. The man's wife was killed. He was seriously injured. The baby was critically ill. What would the public say then? I bet you it would be, what did the police do prior to that to save the life of that woman, that man, and the injured baby? It's a very funny old world, the public. It's always subjecture to what actually happens.
Yeah, I get that, and you know, if that situation had happened, then there's probably going to be people out there saying exactly what you've suggested, which is, oh, why didn't the police act sooner? I think it's the optics of the car being used, really, to ram it, I think is the thing. Just quickly on this, Norman, you don't think that police officer should face any kind of issue? I think they're on desk duties at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's a very distressing video. I can completely agree. We're a country of animal lovers. But the long and the short is, if that police officer acted in a way that he believed he was saving or trying to save somebody else's life, they can take the action they do. And even the National Farmers Union, Patrick, and also a farmer in Dorking, unlike your representative in Northern Ireland, said the police probably acted in the best possible way they could. I think that tells you the answer.
Look, Norman, thank you very, very much, and great to have you on the show. It is Norman Brennan there, a retired police officer. I'll just say another thank you to Kai as well, and also, Kai, I do hope that you are actually all right, because that is a very, very traumatic thing that you've had to witness there, and, you know, so thank you very much for coming on and talking about it. I hope to chat to you again very soon. All right, it's Kai Bennett there, who witnessed the whole thing and got involved. Right, look, the police officer involved has now been removed from frontline duties. Surrey police have said this: I fully appreciate the distress our handling of this incident has caused, and will ensure that it is thoroughly and diligently investigated. In addition to an internal referral to our police standards department, we have also referred the matter to the Independent Office for Police Conduct for independent consideration. We've also briefed the Home Office on what action we are taking, and we are liaising with several animal charities as well. Meanwhile, as you were hearing there, the NFU, the National Farmers Union, has said, while the whole thing looks horrendous, and it is for everyone, they probably did the right thing at the time. The other option is to shoot the animal in that environment. Would you want to be using a rifle in a built-up area on a dark Friday night? I respect all of their views. I do have to say, and people might, you know, not like me for this, I am Team Kai in all of this. I must say, I am Team Kai in all of this. But coming up, former Chancellor Quazi Quatang is live in the studio to shed more light on the Tories' seemingly doomed election campaign. But next, Nigel Farage has launched Reform's election contract, with GB News' Christopher Hope branded a Tory manifesto on steroids, apparently. But what will it mean for Britain? I've got the political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal, picking through this manifesto. Hey, it could be one of the most important manifestos going forward that Britain has ever seen. Stay tuned.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
So you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
Yeah. So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich statement. We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Renlin's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
It's midday. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I will be joined live in this studio by former Chancellor Quazi Quatang as his Tory party continues to tank in the polls. But first, Reform UK launched their election manifesto in Wales earlier today. Nigel Farage sets out his contract for Britain, and GB News' Christopher Hope, our political editor, labelled it a Tory manifesto on steroids. So here are some of the key findings of this. So on immigration, Reform are pledging to freeze non-essential immigration, to create a new tax on employers to hire foreign workers, and to stop the boats by taking illegal migrants who cross the Channel straight back to France. There's more to it than that, I'm summarising. Elsewhere, job seekers will lose access to all benefits if they don't find a job within 4 months or after receiving 2 job offers. Reform will also include a patriotic curriculum to primary and secondary schools. They want to leave the ECHR and scrap net zero targets, which they say will save Britain £30 billion. Well, in the latest polling today, Reform are neck and neck with the Tories on 18%, that's 18%, as Nigel Farage says that he plans to run for Prime Minister in the next general election in 2029. Well, I'm welcoming now the Spectator's political correspondent, James Hill. James, thank you very much. I think there's quite a bit there that is going to get people going, isn't it, really? And I wonder whether or not, actually, that is the kind of manifesto that if the Conservatives had put out, they might have done a bit better.
Yes, well, I mean, it's very different from the one the Conservatives did put out, isn't it? I mean, this election has really been fought over quite a narrow fiscal terrain between the Conservatives and Labour. And what Nigel Farage has done today is present a very different type of manifesto. He's not calling it a manifesto because he says it's synonymous with the word lies in the mind of the public, calling it a contract instead. And instead, we've got a whole bunch of policies which are very eye-catching, probably not going to actually get implemented. But I think they're ones that kind of shift the territory onto debate he wants to have.
I think things, though, that don't really cost much money, because the costing is always the big question when it comes to manifestos or contracts. The things like the patriotic curriculum, you know, teaching people in primary schools and secondary schools about the good things of Britain's past, and also, I believe, as well, about European colonialism. So making it so that it's not just Britain who, you know, occasionally, went and colonised something, really. That's common sense, isn't it, or not?
No, I certainly think that ought to be more of the case. And I think the real danger for the Conservatives is that they've promised a lot of these kind of things over the past 5 years and yet not followed through on them. And of course, it's no surprise that in that case, when you haven't delivered, you therefore create, expectations gap between, reality and what you've actually been promising them. So I think Reform are stepping into that gap, and the Conservatives should have probably done more of that over the past 5 years.
There are issues when it comes to costing, though. They are spending, I think it's only them and the Greens who are spending as much money as they will be on this. They are going for growth, aren't they? And I do wonder whether or not you've managed to see any areas there that might not make financial sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the danger is as well is that, when it comes to tax cuts, it's all very well to talk about, everyone loves tax cuts. It's the spending cuts that are real issues here. And of course, bearing in mind, you could have Quazi Quatang on the show later. Yeah. His government got into issues about 20 billion of tax cuts and the market simply didn't buy it. And I think that's the danger really, is that you might have the best policies in the world, but if you don't have market credibility, that's when it can really bring you down. So I think that a lot of this stuff, might be great, it might be great sort of 10-year thesis, but trying to do it all at once, it can bring you down. I think other things such as, talking about things like the small boats crisis and saying, even if we did pull out the ECHR, would that actually mean we could take back migrants from small boats back into France? Well, probably not, and that's what the Navy is saying. So a lot of it sounds great, but would the reality actually be the same?
Yeah, I mean, I know Richard Tice is very strong on the legality. He puts it forward anyway of being able to do that. Another aspect of this, again, which might not grab that many headlines, but I think is quite an interesting policy, is making it more palatable for students to do 2-year degrees and not 3-year degrees. It is possible. The GDL, the Graduate Diploma in Law, the law conversion course, you do within 10 months. OK, there are degrees out there that are heavyweight, hard-hitting degrees that we do have the capacity to do within a short time frame, therefore potentially saving the nation billions of pounds when it comes to student loans, James.
And I suspect a lot of students would take up that offer. I know, personally from my own experience and those of my peers, well, a lot of them felt the first year was a complete waste. And so I think that that would be something, if it was possibly done, this is the kind of thing that a lot of people will be nodding their heads along with and saying, look, when it comes in, the university sector, that their needs also have to be balanced alongside others, which of course you've got things like the graduate visas, and that's something the Reform will be talking a lot about.
Yeah, indeed. Look, James, thank you very much. We've had a double header of James Heal tonight, which has been fantastic. You'll be sitting in my chair next time, probably, at this rate. But take care. James Heal of The Spectator. Yeah, look, what do you make of that? I think James makes a cracking point, though, which is, look, I mean, Reform are very open about this. They're probably not going to win the election, are they? So you can say some stuff in a contract or a manifesto to the people that you know that there's realistically very little chance of you implementing. But it's a statement of intent, and whether or not Nigel Farage can run to be actual Prime Minister properly in 2029 remains to be seen. But it is a question that I'm going to be putting to Quazi Quatang, who will be with us in the studio shortly. But coming up, Labour's tax plans continue to cause massive amounts of controversy. Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary, Jeff Hoon, will be with me in this studio to attempt to try to defend them, and also some rather bonkers accusations, or are they, of Keir Starmer's past. He seems to be on some kind of communist watch list. Should they not be targeting this a little bit more? Do the public need to know a little bit more about Sir Keir Starmer's past? But next, former Chancellor, as I've been saying, Quazi Quatang, is live right here in the studio. The Tories are tanking in the polls. Yep, OK, fine. But I want to know, does he think they actually want to win this general election? Because I'm not so sure. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It will be another bright start to Tuesday. However, it's going to cloud over through the day and there's a risk of some pretty heavy showers once again. Low pressure still quite close to northern areas, so that's bringing that shower risk, particularly across the north and east through today, but that shower risk will move over to the northwest through tomorrow. So a few showers still to come for eastern Scotland through tonight as well. It will remain fairly cloudy and drizzly across northern areas of Scotland, but elsewhere for the rest of the UK, it'll be a clear and dry night with the risk of some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, and temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees for most towns and cities. So bright start to the day on Tuesday, potentially a bit of mist and fog around, but it's the far north of Scotland that's going to see the cloudiest of skies, and with that northerly wind, it's going to be feeling not a lot like summer at all. 11 or 12 degrees at best, 9 degrees for some of us, and some quite persistent drizzly rain. Now temperatures rise as we head further south with more in the way of sunshine to start the day. As I said, there is a chance of some mist and fog, and notice this massive rain over the near continent. That will start to approach from the south and east through Tuesday lunchtime, and we could see some heavy rain across parts of Kent and Sussex, and then towards Essex, parts of Suffolk as well later on in the day. So here it will turn potentially quite wet. We could also see some very heavy showers across western areas of Scotland as well as northwestern England, but elsewhere a dry and fairly bright day, but a little bit cooler than today, tomorrow. Now, another bright start to come on Wednesday, and Wednesday's looking like a much brighter day by and large as well. However, we do have a weather front approaching from the north and west. That will bring thicker cloud to parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well later on in the day. But for most of us, it stays dry and bright as we head through Wednesday, Thursday and likely into Friday as well, with temperatures rising towards 24 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
there's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I often used to propose the abolition of the monarchy.
Ex-Chancellor Quazi Quatang is live. Why is Rishi Sunak not attacking Sir Keir Starmer? And has Jeremy Hunt gone missing? Does the Chancellor no longer back the Prime Minister? Has anyone seen him? Also,
this is the Tory manifesto, utterly shredded by Jeremy Hunt.
all right. Former Defence Secretary, Transport Secretary, Minister of State for Europe, Jeff Hoon, is on to try to defend Labour and... Are sensitive Sallys in the media right to be offended by the 10 German bombers song? Plus...
little tap.
Give it a good tap. Yes, that's
and
what
I know everybody watching the news channel right now is going to be...
Look, when are the establishment media going to do their job and stop sucking up to Sir Ed Davey? Also...
Come here.
Right,
Come here.
Come here.
Oh my
Whoa!
Find out why this upset Ed Balls so much. I've got tomorrow's newspapers tonight with Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and Labour supporter Benjamin Butterworth, and the founder of Global Britain, Tory affiliate Ammon Bagal. Oh, yes. And what's happening here?
I'm stupid in. You ain't joking on.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Former Chancellor Quazi Quatang is in the hot seat. Next.
Good evening with GB News. And Reform UK launched its election contract in South Wales today, describing it as a serious plan to reshape the way that Britain is run. The Reform leader, Nigel Farage, said he wouldn't call it a manifesto because too many voters have lost confidence in that term. He outlined plans to freeze all non-essential immigration and take Britain out of the European Convention on Human Rights. Reform UK would also introduce a new tax for employers which choose to hire workers from overseas. And earnings under £20,000 a year would be tax-free, with extra funds made available by abolishing the government's net zero targets. Mr Farage says he wants to restore trust in British politics.
The great British public who want some hope, who want some aspiration, those at the lower end of the income scale who can't make ends meet, those who are trapped on benefits, and I mean trapped, they can't get off because you work for more than 16 hours a week, they take your benefits away. We're aiming at those people. We're aiming at people who would like well-paid jobs in the manufacturing sector.
Meanwhile, a Press Association poll of polls reflecting party ratings over the last 7 days gives Labour the lead, with 41% ahead of the Conservatives on 21 and Reform UK on 15. But the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said today he'll fight on and intends to win. Sir Keir Starmer's promising an end to what he's called chopping and changing in government, which he says discourages investment in Britain. He's also vowed to drive down child poverty after the Institute for Fiscal Studies warned the number of children affected by the two-child benefit cap will rise by a third over the next 5 years. But Sir Keir says the cap will remain in place for the time being.
Look, it's a tough choice. I'll be clear about that. But one of the things that we are not going to do as we go into this election is to make announcements about changes that we can't afford, because a lot of damage has been done to the economy. So I'm taking the tough choice to say to people before they vote, these are some of the things we won't be able to do because of the state of the economy. What I don't want to do is do what the Tories are doing, which is sort of promise the earth without the funding. And, you know, guess what? After the event, as we've seen in the last 14 years, nothing gets delivered.
Sir Keir Starmer. Now, were you watching England last night? Well, UEFA is investigating allegations of discriminatory chanting by Serbian fans during England's 1-0 win in their Euro 2024 opener in Germany. England players were reportedly targeted with racist abuse during the match, but it's understood no complaints were made from the England camp. The Kosovan Football Federation had earlier complained to UEFA about Serbian flags, chants and banners at the match, which it claimed contained political, chauvinistic and racist messages against Kosovo. And just lastly, the King and Queen led the monarchy in celebrating the ancient Order of the Garter today as the royal family's summer season began. The royal couple followed tradition, keeping actually to the back of the procession, dressed in white plumed hats and dark blue velvet robes. Other members of the order, including the Prince of Wales, Princess Royal and Duke of Edinburgh, were also there, but the Duke of York was a notable absence. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back. So it is just 17 days until the general election finishes, and it looks like the Conservatives may have admitted defeat.
So, look, I think there is a lot to be concerned about. Starmer is the only other person who can conceivably walk into Downing Street.
Well, one poll says that man, Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, will lose his seat, so will Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and Home Secretary James Cleverly. Another poll today puts Reform level with the Tories on 18%. That comes after a poll last week that Nigel Farage's party were 1 point ahead of the Conservatives. Well, the news today is that Cabinet Ministers are apparently begging Rishi Sunak to go for the jugular and launch more personal attacks on Sir Keir Starmer. He seems reluctant to do that, and the general tone of the campaign so far has left many people wondering if Mr Sunak actually wants to win. And it's on this issue that I'm going to start with my guest, former Chancellor Quazi Quatang. Mr Quatang, thank you very much for joining us here right in the studio at GB News. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
So look, over the weekend, it's emerged that Sir Keir Starmer ended up on some kind of communist spy file, joining a Czechoslovakian work camp at the height of the Cold War. He's represented terrorist organisations as a lawyer. Labour want to introduce a policy that would mean more men, conceivably, in women's changing rooms. He's on the record saying he used to want to abolish the monarchy. I mean, does Rishi Sunak not have the bottle to bring any of this up? What's going on?
Well, I think we need to fight a more aggressive campaign. I think Keir Starmer is a man of the left, very much so. And he's obviously trying to pretend or portray himself as something more akin to a centrist politician. And I think it's the job of the Conservative Party, and particularly the Prime Minister, who's going head-to-head with Sir Keir, to point that out. And I'm not sure that we are being forensic enough in terms of saying, look, this man is odds-on likely, given the polls, to be Prime Minister. Have we looked, have we given him enough scrutiny? Have we looked hard enough at his record to make sure that we're happy with it. And I think people will be very surprised to hear some of the positions.
But what kind of stuff would you be saying? You know, if you...
Well, I think, dare I say it, Boris Johnson always had a very good line on Keir Starmer. I mean, he essentially said, you know, he was a lawyer who backed terrorist organisations. And Rishi has sort of gone there to an extent. But I think he could be much more robust in saying, look, this man could be Prime Minister and we need to shine a light on all the various positions he's had over many years.
This is a story that just literally fell into my lap during the news bulletin there, so I will put this to you. The noise in the Telegraph right now is that apparently Boris Johnson is being drafted back in by the Conservatives to play a more active role in campaigning. What do you make of that?
Look, Boris Johnson, whether you love him or loathe him, I happen to like him, but he was the most effective Tory campaigner in his generation, without a shadow of a doubt. He won the mayoralty in London twice. He obviously won the Tory leadership. He had a big role to play in the Brexit referendum. And he won a majority of 80, the largest majority the Conservatives had since 1987. So his track record as a campaigner, as somebody who wins campaigns, is second to none in this generation. And it would be mad not to try and bring him in to help the Conservative Party at a very difficult time.
Do you think that the Conservatives would be better served going into this election with him still as...
I was always a Boris loyalist. People know that about me. I never thought it was a good idea to get rid of him. And I think a lot of people in marginal seats who can see that they're... I mean, I'm not standing in this election. A lot of people in marginal seats, maybe secretly, and they won't go public, might wish that Boris Johnson was still leading them because, frankly, in my view, they'd have a better chance of winning those seats. But the party made its decisions. It got rid of Boris. It made its decisions, and I think we're going to pay the price for those decisions.
Well, just on that, Nigel Farage standing, big blow to the Conservatives. He's saying now that he wants to run for Prime Minister in 2029. Do you think that he's got a chance?
No, I don't think Reform will supplant the Conservative Party, even on the current dire polls for the Conservatives. Reform have, 5 seats? And I don't think, or 6 seats, and I don't think they'll be able to make that leap in time. But clearly he's been a big spoiler for our party, for the Conservatives. And if the idea to have a snap election, which, after all, that's what it was the Prime Minister who decided. Nobody anticipated this. But if the idea was to try and spike Reform's guns and prevent Nigel getting momentum, I think that hasn't gone well because he's clearly getting momentum and he's clearly enjoying himself on the campaign trail.
I've got to ask, Labour are saying that the Tories have got a £71 billion black hole in their finances. And I can't help but wonder where Jeremy Hunt is. He's been largely anonymous this campaign, from what I've seen. The latest polling did have him down as actually losing his own seat. Labour's Rachel Reeves is front and centre of their campaigns. Does this not suggest that Jeremy Hunt doesn't support Rishi Sunak?
No, I think that's completely wrong. I think the reality is that Jeremy Hunt has represented the seat that he's standing for 19 years. He got into Parliament in 2005. And as everyone can see that reads the polls, there's a real chance he might lose his seat. So in that case, he's spending, as any, I think, other parliamentarian would do, a lot of time fighting the local campaign.
Well, should he not be selling the economic promises when it comes to things like national service, when it comes to some of the potential tax cuts that we're getting here, or just the general way that we're going to run the country economically? I mean, I would argue that at the moment, Labour have come across, whether they're telling the truth or not is a different question, but Labour have come across as the party of economic competence here. I mean, the Chancellor's gone AWOL.
No. Obviously, in an ideal world, he would be campaigning on a national level to get the Tories re-elected. The world we're in at the moment, given all the polling, I'm not convinced by the polling, but given, let's go with what we see. The polling suggests that his seat is in danger. And as an MP who's represented the seat for 20 years. See, people don't understand or realise is that the MP is the fundamental job. You can be a backbencher in opposition, you could be a backbencher in government, you could be on the front bench in opposition and in government. But that's fundamentally, you're an MP. That's the job. And if his seat is in danger, it's absolutely reasonable for him to be spending a lot of time trying to get re-elected so that his constituents can re-elect him.
On the future of the Conservative Party, there has been a lot of scrutiny over people like, Richard Holden, for example, who has parachuted himself into, well, what I think he hopes is a safe seat. That remains to be seen. In Billericay, away from the North East. And the general selection of candidates. And it appears to be that the Conservative Party, with one hand, you've got Suella Braverman saying they want to welcome Nigel Farage in, and then on the other hand, you've got people like David Davis saying you wouldn't give the golf club arsonist the membership, would you? What direction do the Conservatives need to go in here? Because it does seem a bit all over the place.
So, look, I think there are a lot of wild words. I saw Suella's comment, I saw David Davis's comment. Let's just wait to see what happens on July the 4th, July the 5th. Because clearly, if Nigel Farage doesn't win in Clacton, it becomes less of an issue. And if he does get into Parliament, the party, presumably, if it's in opposition, but even if it's in government, we'd have to accommodate members of Parliament and see what he stands for, see what he's going to go into the lobbies with us for. But there's no point prejudging that before the actual result.
Well, why should people, and I mean this with respect, why should people vote for the Conservative Party? I hesitate to say, you've given up. I know that you've done a lot of service and you want to move on. All right, fine. But a lot of other Tory MPs have given up. They've thrown the towel in. Grant Shapps appears to have given up and thrown the towel in. He's going all over the national media, splashing himself across it, saying that they're not going to win. I mean, why on earth should anyone vote for the Conservatives?
Look, there are two things here. There are people who, because they've served 14, 19 years in Parliament, have decided. I think Michael Gove said it very well. We're not conscripts. People have a choice as to whether they want to serve in Parliament. I think the conditions of being an MP are very, very much more difficult than necessarily they were when we started. But that's a separate issue to whether I think we can win or not. I think it's very challenging. I mean, let's face it. But at the same time, I think the people who are prophesying some supermajority for Labour are probably off the mark. And
just very finally on this, are you secretly quite happy that Rishi Sunak's struggling?
No, not at all. I mean, I think my problem with this is that if the Conservative Party suffers a bad result, we're going to have a long march towards socialism. And that's what I'm particularly concerned about. I'm concerned about the way that Labour can change the cultural dynamics in this country. I'm concerned about a lot of their, trans cultural woke warrior attitudes, and I think they can transform this country very much for the worse. So I'm not gleeful or happy that Rishi Sunak is struggling necessarily. I think he'll get back to an even keel. Obviously, last week was a difficult week, but I'm very hopeful that he can find his voice during the campaign.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for coming into the studio as well. I do hope to talk to you again very, very soon. There's former Chancellor there, Quazi Quatang. I'm just going to whiz it over now quickly to get the thoughts of my panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. I've also got Benjamin Butterworth with us as well, journalist, and Aman Bagal as well, founder of Global Britain. Aman, I'm just going to start with you because you are a Conservative member, right? And so, what do you make of what we've just heard there from former Chancellor Quazi Quatang? What do you?
I think I resonate with much of what Quazi has had to say. I think, look, I very much agree with this last point that this could end up being a very long march to socialism under Keir Starmer. Let's not forget, in his earlier days, he was very much commie light, if not communist full, and he backed Corbyn twice to be Prime Minister. So, look, the thing is, it is difficult times for the Conservative Party, and we've seen today the small C Conservative challenge from reform. But we have to be able to be in a position that post this election, there has to be a very quick reorientation of the right.
OK, all right, Carol, I'll come to you on this. Do you think that Rishi Sunak should be attacking Keir Starmer personally a bit more? Mr Quatang was talking about it there. I rattled off a few, I would have thought, quite obvious attack lines that Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to want to target.
No, he doesn't. And it isn't just that. He doesn't seem to want to shout. In the last 12 months I've been watching, he doesn't seem to want to trumpet the triumphs of the Tories either, the things that the Tories achieved. Anything, even if it was a small thing, he never wanted to shout about it. And I never quite understood that. But three things really resonated me there with Quazi. The first one was drafting Boris in. Why didn't Sunak do that at the start of the campaign? I don't understand it. Quazi's right. You know, he's one of the most effective campaigners this country has ever known. Why? Is it arrogance? Is it vanity that he didn't bring him in at the start? And what terrifies me is this long march towards socialism. It really scares. I think within 5 years they could change the face of this country, that it'll be unrecognisable for most of us.
Do you not think that Rishi Sunak should just, taking your kind of Labour hat off here, really, it will just be good, smart politics to go after Keir Starmer's record in a way that he's not doing?
Well, I think they've tried to do that and it's not stuck because their record is so much weaker. What was extraordinary from that interview with Quazi Quatang is not an ounce of taking responsibility for what's going on himself. You know, the one thing that the Labour Party has to say to persuade people very effectively is the time when Liz Truss and Quazi Quatang were in charge, the economy nosedived and their mortgages went up in cost. And frankly, people like Quazi Quatang, if they took responsibility for what happened, then maybe the Tories would have...
That's clearly fake news.
That duo crashed the economy.
I mean,
2 years of
absolute
COVID
nonsense.
crashed the economy. It's tosh to say that the fact they were in power for a very short period of time crashed the economy.
Look, we know very well that Liz and Quazi were trying to challenge the orthodoxy of the Bank of England and the Treasury, and that's what caused it. It's being debunked. This is a dead horse that the Labour Party and Labour supporters are beating.
The polls are absolutely clear. And the fact is that the Tories can't stand on their record because their record is a disaster.
Starmer is obsessed in an unnatural way by Liz Truss. Throughout this campaign, he talks about nothing else. She was only in power for a handful of weeks and he cannot get over it.
All right.
He needs to.
OK, well, it's been a lively start. Thank you very much, obviously, to former Chancellor Quazi Quatang and my wonderful panel. Coming up, I've got the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Sir Keir Starmer sports a plain white T-shirt while watching England play. That has sparked accusations that he didn't want to offend the other home nations. So should the Labour leader be a bit more patriotic? We'll be discussing about that. But first, well, that's not Labour's only problem, because some analysis claims that Starmer's march towards net zero and their GB energy plan will leave a £4.5 billion tax black hole. That is, amongst other things, and I can't wait, actually, to put to Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary, Jeff Hoon, who joins me live next. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's midday. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today, we've got a veteran who endeavours to help those suffering from anxiety in all its various forms and manifestations.
Yes, over 3 decades, Simon Lee has established himself as a pioneer, seeking new ways to coach personal development and mental strength.
Now, look, there's this famous phrase, isn't it, that hard times create weak men and weak men create hard times. Is that the kind of philosophy that your work is based on?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because as a child, I received a masterclass in how weak men create hard times.
Did you go through hard times as a kid?
We had 3 toxic men in the family, and they caused the family no end of grief, trauma and hardship. So, and at the time when you're going through it, you think, well, you can't help but fall into a victim mentality. You think, why me? Why am I going through this? But actually, I couldn't do what I do now without that masterclass.
Do you mind me asking who those men were?
Yep, it's fine. One of them was my stepfather.
Yeah.
One of them was my grandfather, and one of them was my uncle.
Right.
So they're all inner family members. And without exception, all of them, outside of the family doors, wanted to put themselves across as moral pillars of society.
How do you turn that story around and be the man that you are today and turn what you went through into a positive? How do you do that?
You've established that pretty much you can, choose to be a victim of your circumstance or use it as inspiration to do better and say, do you know what, when I'm older, for example, if you had a bad childhood, I want to make sure my kids get the kind of childhood I didn't have. So how do you relay that to the people you mentor now, I guess?
What we do, I set up something called Unlimited Courage. We talk about giving men a primary aim of courage. So we bring in philosophies such as Stoicism, our own 7 Courages, Bushido, and they love it. They love it. And I must admit, when I found it, I felt like I'd found the Holy Grail.
Wow.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Tomorrow's newspapers are hot off the press very, very shortly. But first, controversy continues to swirl, not only over Labour's wishy-washy position on tax and mooted migrant amnesties, but now also their proposed GB energy venture. Well, frontbencher Jonathan Ashworth was left a bit stumped this morning when asked how much lower household bills would actually be under Labour's energy plans.
Who are struggling to make ends meet at the moment. Under Labour, you will be better off and your energy bills will be cut.
Well, how much will they be cut by the end of a first year in government under Labour?
Well, this is obviously across a parliament, and you've got to invest in the renewable...
So how much by the end of the parliament?
I'm not going to give
10%
you...
10% lower? 20% lower?
I'm not going to give you a figure just plucked from thin air.
Well, Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho also today warned that there could apparently be a £4.5 billion tax black hole in Keir Starmer's march towards net zero. Meanwhile, Grant Shapps had this to say about potential Labour voters this morning.
We actually set out precisely where we'll get the money from. Not so when it comes to Starmer's Labour manifesto. That contains implicit tax rises on your home, on your job, on your car, on your pension. And if you want to avoid those taxes, then you need to do that by voting Conservative.
OK, look, here to discuss all of this now is Tony Blair's former Defence Secretary. It's Jeff Hoon. Jeff, thank you very much. Great to have you in the studio. I'm going to start about Keir Starmer, personally here. So it emerged over the weekend that he was on a Czechoslovakian communist spy list because apparently at the height of the Cold War, he's gone to go to a work camp over there. I mean, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Are the public right to be sceptical of his politics?
Well, I read the Daily Mail story, and he went there to rebuild a monument to the victims of a Nazi atrocity. But it did remind me of something. It was when I first heard the name Keir Starmer, because by coincidence, my first job was teaching law at Leeds University. And before I left and went to America to teach in another university, my friends there told me that they had now got the most brilliant law student that they'd had in a generation, and that was Keir Starmer. And of course, he had an utterly brilliant legal career before he went into politics. So he's not someone who's easily moved or changed.
You don't think it's a bit weird? Yeah. I mean, you don't think it's... Yeah, but that's the point, very clear views. And at 23, apparently he went to Czechoslovakia at the height of the Cold War. I mean, it's a bit odd, no? Not a bit weird?
I visited East Berlin shortly before the wall came down. It was important to know what we were dealing with, and I'm sure he went there in that spirit of adventure as a very young man.
OK. He supported Jeremy Corbyn. He wanted to abolish the monarchy years ago, signed a letter lobbying for foreign criminals to be taken off deportation flights, happily represented terrorist organisations abroad, thought it was wrong to strip Shamima Begum of her citizenship, took the knee for Black Lives Matter. Is it not fair to say that Sir Keir Starmer is asking the public to believe that he's a completely different man to the one he's been for the last 40 years?
I don't accept that for a moment. I think he set out very clear positions for the Labour Party, set out very clear positions in his own set of principles, so I don't have any difficulty with that at all.
Are his current principles not radically different from all of the ones that he had, though?
No, they're not. I think he's set out a set of ideas for the country, for Labour in power, and I'm confident that he will deliver on those.
You don't think there should be a healthy degree of scepticism voting for a man who used to want to abolish the monarchy, who lobbied to get foreign criminals to stay in Britain, and as well, who, you know, took the knee for Black Lives Matter, I suppose. Plenty of people do that, you could say, but that support for Jeremy Corbyn. You don't think there has been a monumental, seismic shift in Keir Starmer as a person in the last year and a half?
No, not at all.
No?
No.
Well, how do you go from that to where he is now, then?
Because I don't accept the interpretation you've placed on decisions, for example, that he took as Director of Public Prosecutions, where he was carrying out an important role and carrying it out very effectively.
Oh, OK, I mean, he obviously wasn't Director of Public Prosecution when he was supporting Jeremy Corbyn, but on Great British Energy, Labour have repeatedly told us our bills are going to come down. We heard a clip there. More jobs are going to be created. There's an issue now, though, because they failed to say how much bills will come down, but I think for me the big points are the supposed 650,000 jobs they said it's going to create. They can't tell us actually if they're going to be new jobs or whether or not it's people who've been shifted from oil and gas will just get different jobs. They've also said now that they're going to use public money to potentially buy existing green sites, not just create new ones. Labour has built a manifesto around Great British Energy. They don't seem to know what it is, do they?
I think the essential point of Great British Energy is to take control of energy policy so that we as a country can determine the way in which we develop not only green policies, but the way in which we provide energy to business, to households across the country. I was in the Foreign Office for a time and we produced a paper looking at where Britain's energy came from at the time. And the problem was that it came from a whole series of countries that we do not wish to rely upon. At the time, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, countries that were very difficult to predict how they would behave and react.
One of the issues, and sorry to interrupt, but I think this is important, which is that we only see an uptick in the amount that we can be self-sufficient if this Great British Energy builds new green sites, not just buys existing ones off people in the private sector. And as it currently stands, Labour can't tell us if they're going to be building any more of these. It could just be, well, like, frankly, that would be a complete waste of taxpayers' money, wouldn't it?
That's certainly one aspect of it. But what I'm really saying, and which I think is more fundamental than the point you're making, is that actually Great British Energy is about making sure that we have the right policies across the board, not only in the green energy sector, but also to ensure that, as a country, we're not subject to the kinds of highs and lows that we've seen in recent years, where obviously the invasion of Ukraine had a huge impact on energy prices in the UK and elsewhere. But at the same time, it meant that we were looking at, as Germany still is, sources of energy from places like Russia that, frankly, we don't want to trade with.
But if we don't actually build our new sites, then it's an idea. It's arguably like Keir Starmer with the NHS and not wanting to go private. It's ideology over practicality, isn't it?
I don't accept that, not least because the reality is that even under a Conservative government, we've actually led the way in relation to alternative sources of energy. So that's simply building on what has actually been a success for the Conservatives.
OK. Just to whiz it on now, we did actually speak at the 9 p.m. hour there to a French security official on the other side of the channel who was saying that there is going to be, he was adamant about it, is going to be a huge illegal migration influx because of the way that the EU has just voted when it comes to European elections and some of the policies that they are potentially going to be bringing in those EU nations. At the same time, Labour is looking to allow 90,000 more illegal migrants to at least have the opportunity to claim asylum in this country. Would a Labour government not both put us out of step with the European Union, but also make us literally the most attractive destination in Europe for illegal migrants?
I don't accept for the moment, and that's never been the case. And actually, if you look at the distribution of migration across the European Union, we're very much at the bottom end of the pile. I mean, countries like Germany.
You don't think we already take too many? Illegal migrants?
Germany, no, I'm not saying we should take more than we're taking, but one of the problems with the figure that you've just used is that actually the government have deliberately slowed down the process of dealing with migrants coming into the UK. And obviously there's a backlog of cases there that have to be sorted.
Yeah. Is it not a slight problem for Labour, though, that if things go a certain way in France, we've seen the way that Germany's been going, we already know that there are quite a few nations like Hungary, for example, they're in the European Union, you've also got Italy. If they start essentially closing their borders and arresting and detaining and stopping benefits for illegal migrants, their only way is either to go back to countries like Sudan, which they're not going to do, or come to Britain, isn't it?
Well, it isn't, because actually the only way they get to Britain is through the very countries that you mentioned. So if those countries are closing their borders, presumably, as a matter of logic, it would mean fewer people coming to the UK.
OK, so no concerns there. No concerns for you about England becoming or Britain, I should say, becoming more of a land of milk and honey for illegal migrants into Labour?
I don't accept that. But what's important is we maintain very tough policies to deter those who are not legally entitled to come to the UK.
All right, thank you very, very much. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I would really hope to talk to you again very, very soon. That's Jeff Hoon now, who's a former Labour Defence Minister, amongst other things as well, it must be said. Thank you very much. Now, coming up, as the BBC reports on Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey building sandcastles, are the media being a little bit too soft on the potential leader of the opposition? But next, yes, the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. We get stuck into that with my panel. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News and weather update from the Met Office. It will be another bright start to Tuesday. However, it's going to cloud over through the day and there's a risk of some pretty heavy showers once again. Low pressure still quite close to northern areas, so that's bringing that shower risk, particularly across the north and east through today, but that shower risk will move over to the northwest through tomorrow. So a few showers still to come for eastern Scotland through tonight as well. It will remain fairly cloudy and drizzly across northern areas of Scotland, but elsewhere for the rest of the UK, it'll be a clear and dry night with the risk of some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, and temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees for most towns and cities. So bright start to the day on Tuesday, potentially a bit of mist and fog around, but it's the far north of Scotland that's going to see the cloudiest of skies, and with that northerly wind it's going to be feeling not a lot like summer at all. 11 or 12 degrees at best, 9 degrees for some of us, and some quite persistent drizzly rain. Now temperatures rise as we head further south, with more in the way of sunshine to start the day. As I said, there is a chance of some mist and fog, and notice this massive rain over the near continent. That will start to approach from the south and east through Tuesday lunchtime, and we could see some heavy rain across parts of Kent and Sussex, and then towards Essex, parts of Suffolk as well later on in the day. So here it will turn potentially quite wet. We could also see some very heavy showers across western areas of Scotland as well as northwestern England, but elsewhere a dry and fairly bright day, but a little bit cooler than today, tomorrow. Now, another bright start to come on Wednesday, and Wednesday's looking like a much brighter day by and large as well. However, we do have a weather front approaching from the north and west. That will bring thicker cloud to parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well later on in the day. But for most of us, it stays dry and bright as we head through Wednesday, Thursday and likely into Friday as well, with temperatures rising towards 24 degrees.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akweya. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. I've got the very first of tomorrow's front pages for you. Let's do it. Let's start with the Metro. Hero patients stop bomber-killing nurses. Lone wolf terrorist talked of detonating device. So this is a hospital patient who stepped in let me just read through this. As alleged self-radicalised lone wolf terrorist who wanted to kill as many nurses as possible with a bomb and a knife attack. Nathan Newby was smoking a cigarette outside when he saw Mohammed Farouk began a conversation that finished with the would-be attacker giving him his phone so we could call the police. I'd quite like to go into that in a bit more detail. More on that later. The Eye, Farage, it's impossible to know if Reform would keep low tax pledge. Reform UK leader admits that his party's manifesto promises may not add up, they say. Let's go to The Guardian. Farage accused of cut and spend manifesto that doesn't add up. Reform UK leader plans to establish a bridgehead ready for the 2029 election. Let's go to The Telegraph. Tories turn to Johnson to counter reform. I put this to the former Chancellor Quazi Quatang earlier. Former Prime Minister signs letters to Red Wall voters as Tories warn of a generation under Labour. Boris is now being drafted in. As Quazi said, maybe they shouldn't have got rid of him. Let's go to The Mirror. Willkommen, England. German cops tell fans have a great time, but warning over the mindless few. All right, I'll argue that's a relatively mindless front page, but there we go. I'm joined by my panel now to have a look at some of these papers and some of the inside stories as well. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and founding chairman of Global Britain UK, Aman Bagal. I mean, I suppose the new line that we've got here is that the Tories are turning to Boris Johnson, isn't it? So, Carol, what do you make of this? There's a direct mail drive urging people to vote Tory that apparently is coming from the former Prime Minister.
Isn't it the irony, you know, the Tories, they really are responsible for their own destruction. They've been eating themselves alive for the last 2 years by getting rid of this guy who, as Quazi said before, you know, is the greatest campaigner of all time. And here now, having deposed him, having chucked him out, they're now begging him for help to make sure that the slaughter isn't as bad as it could be. It's farcical. They deserve, you know, I don't want Labour in, but the Tories deserve what's happening to them right now.
Go on, Benjamin.
I think too many Tories are pretending that the 2019 Boris Johnson is still a possibility. It's not. You know, the reason that this Parliament started to collapse for the Tories was because of the lies, the compulsive lies of Boris Johnson. And I think the idea that you'd get the same response on the doorstep as 5 years ago is mythical.
This is all about a piece of cake he never had.
You sit here and you tell yourself such ridiculous versions of events.
Ridiculous versions of events.
Well, it is, because the polling shows that the kind of things you tell yourselves about how they didn't crash the economy and how Boris Johnson isn't a liar. The Tories are loathed because of what happened. You can sit here kidding yourself, but you'll keep losing elections so long as you do it.
Really imagine that
it's a very simple matter. Look, Boris has always been a winner. I stood with him for...
Until he lost.
No, I stood with him when he won London the second time, the only Conservative mayor to do so. Look, the fact is, Boris is very keen to help out good people who won on the Boris wave in the Red Wall.
But doesn't that tell you something, that he only wants to help out the people that were helping him?
No, not at all. He's helping people who won the Red Wall as a promise from Boris Johnson.
He is not a team player.
All right, OK, guys, look, we're going to have to whiz it on now because as nearly 15 million people tuned in to watch England's opening Euro match against Serbia, politicians seem keen not to drop the ball. So our Sky-deprived, Haribo-eating Prime Minister cheered on pub style. There he is in the pub. But despite opting for a hoodie over what we believe to be an England shirt, there were a couple of St George's flags poking out of a pint glass behind him to support England. Ed Davey watched on from his battle bus adorned with flags. But while there was some confusion about whether Davey was actually cheering at all, because it does appear that the small television he was watching was tucked out of sight. There we are. Yes, he wasn't just shouting at well, we don't think he was shouting anyway, just at the wall of a bus. But anyway, but Sir Keir Starmer has been ridiculed for wearing what appears to be a plain white T-shirt to cheer on his nation. So he stood there, you got Angela Rayner there and two comedians. The jokes do write themselves in this sense, by the way. But anyway, they're all donning there the Three Lions shirt. Now, apparently, aides warned the Labour leader that he'd risk offending Scottish voters. But was this a bit of an own goal for Labour? I mean, with respect, when you go to watch an England game, OK, you would put on an England shirt. You wouldn't just get a new M&S white vest out of the cupboard, would you, and put it on? Is that not a bit odd? I don't know. But there we go. Now, we all know emotions run high when it comes to football, and the Euros are no exception. We've seen a man shot dead by police for wielding a pickaxe and a mass brawl between 150 fans, both Serbian and English. A police officer faced heavy head wounds. 7 Serbians were arrested and 1 England supporter sadly ended up in hospital. Well, England fans have been seen chanting 10 German bombers, which is a song it's not mock. I don't think he's mocking anything. I think he's being very pleased about the fact that we won the war. I would also politely suggest that maybe the only people it really offends are Nazis, and do we really care about that? That's my stance on it anyway. But apparently the establishment media have been losing their tiny little minds about this. I was watching 10 o'clock news last night on a channel I won't name, and before they told you the result of the England game, they told you the England fans had been singing that song. And I thought, is that the story? Is it? Anyway, while Albanians were having some fun snapping spaghetti in front of Italians, this is great, by the way. Look, you got the Italians on his knees. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then the snapping of the spaghetti comes, a broken heart. There it is. Right, OK. One England fan spent a bit more time in the stadium than he'd bargained for.
I'm just walking out. Shivered in, choking on.
4 a.m. that was, but British officers deployed to Germany to hoover up hooligan behaviour have reported fans snorting cocaine off the back of their hands whilst chanting "It's coming home." Although fans from a mixture of nations are getting into trouble, it must be said. Sorry, but it's football. It's football, isn't it? I'm obviously not condoning drug use or anything like that, but with respect, we don't quite know what the Serbs were singing, do we? And I suspect most of that was awful. Anyway, coming up, the Princess of Wales made a much welcome return to public duty at the weekend, while the LGBTQ+ wing of Ukraine's armed forces are also making a splash. Both are up for gongs in tonight's Greatest Britain Union Jackass, but also Noel Edmonds has been living in New Zealand in recent years, but he made an emphatic return to British morning television today.
Come here. Right.
Whoa.
Come here.
Come here. Whoa.
All right, it's Patrick Christys tonight. I'll be back in a tick.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Taylor Swift is in town. Her billion-dollar blockbuster Eras tour will arrive in this country today. What can we expect?
Yes, that's right. This tour has been a long time in the making. It kicked off last March in America, in Arizona. So it's eventually now made its way to the UK, and tonight it will be kick-starting in Edinburgh. It will also have dates in Liverpool, Cardiff, Dublin and London. So needless to say, there is a lot of Swiftie fans on the loose right now. It's like Beatlemania all over again. But what I love about Taylor, though, is the fact that she exudes empowerment, confidence, and she also is such a good role model as well, I think, for the younger generation. She's always had this wholesome image as well. She writes all her own music, she plays lots of different instruments, and she's just an all-round great performer, isn't she?
But she's actually done a whole load of different types of music, hasn't she?
She has, that's right. She started off as a country pop singer, and she's now transcended into this mainstream music artist, and she's such a massive reach. Like I say, she's toured around America, South America, Europe and now the UK. She's very much a household name, and I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there who doesn't know who Taylor Swift is right now, like her or not.
She brings in the money. I mean, think about it, not just the ticket sales, but also all of the hotel accommodation people are booking, or the transport, or the extras, the food, the drink, the what do you call it? All the stuff that you buy that goes
merch,
all of that, the Swiftie merch.
Yeah.
She's a boom to the economy.
The People's Channel.
OK, welcome back. I've decided there's nothing really interesting on the other front pages, so we're just going to talk about what we were talking about before, which is the 10 German bombers song. Carol, I think that the establishment media have lost their tiny little minds about a load of football fans getting stuck in having a bit of a laugh.
I think the establishment and the media have lost their tiny little minds with this fuss over the Euros every year. You know what it is? The media goes mental. We're talking about it for the week before. We've got Harry Kane saying, you know, be afraid. What's to be afraid of? This competition's been going since 1960. We have never, ever won it. In 2020, we came second. OK, 56 years before that, we scraped a third. Every other time it's been pants. We're hopeless at it. And yet we have this amazing British words. It's hope over experience. Well, you know, the reality is we're not very good. The only people who were good were the women who won it in 22.
Fair enough. But I think that the media, for me, are itching for there to be trouble with, so they can slam our own fans.
Well, it's the only story there is, because actually the football won't be the story. They only just won against Serbia last night. I watched that match, and Serbia are not a very good team.
Serbia are a decent side. They're massive.
Decent.
They're physical. They're all over 6'1".
Yeah, well, that doesn't count.
I mean, I watched the last final. I was reporting from an Italian bar, so I had a great time. I was on the winning side. But, you know, I think those scenes that we see with the fights and the brawls and the blood are just appalling. You know, I just don't understand why straight white men can't just go and enjoy themselves without getting into a fight. Why does this always happen? And they shame our country.
It's not really us, Benjamin.
No, it's not really
the Serbs kicked off big time. You see, ultra behaviour, the ultras, is absolutely rampant on the continent.
It is.
When was the last time that you saw it massively kick off at a domestic game in this country?
Well, that's the thing, Patrick. Look, English fans are renowned for being the most patriotic, the most passionate, and the most...
One way of putting it.
Well, look, are you really telling me, Benjamin, that we've got fans from other countries who do not kick off, who are not violent, who do not chant racist things at our players who happen to be of black African origin? Are you telling me that? No.
No, I never said that, but there's a reason we've got a reputation.
Ourselves, actually.
And, you know, the fact that you can't go to... If you go to Wembley, alcohol is banned because of the extent of problems they've had tells you enough. I'd suggest the reason we don't have those kind of brawls going on here is because you're not allowed to get a pint in the stand. Whereas as soon as you go over there and you can get incredibly drunk as those people do, look at the state of it.
But
I mean, they bring shame on England.
We do this all the time about making it about the booze. It's not. It should be about the football. And the football from our lot won't be very good. It has not been in the past. It's not like to be this year.
I believe. All right, I believe. All right, and as far as I'm concerned, if that inflatable Spitfire in the air, I don't see any problem with that at all. Like I said before, I think the only people who should really offend are Nazis, and I haven't really got any problem offending them. Now, Deal or No Deal star Noel Edmonds caused quite a stir this morning after an unscripted comment live on national television. Here it is.
Come here.
Right.
Come here.
Come here.
Whoa! The only thing that can be said about this...
Yeah, was never, ever do it again.
He makes Ed look slim. Right.
Still to come.
Fair enough, I think. All right, so it's time for Greatest Britain and Union Jackass time. Let's do it.
Oh, start with him. I've lost mine.
OK, good stuff, Carol. So I'm going to start with Benjamin's Greatest Britain, please.
It's quite funny, because let me tell you, her Greatest Britain and Union Jackass were my choices, but Carol had got there first.
Yeah, well, I know what they are, but I just need my name.
I'd really like it if we did them.
Sorry, my Greatest Britain it's an honorary one, and it's the soldiers, the Ukrainian soldiers who marched in their Pride Parade, their Pride March on Sunday. I went to the first ever Pride held in Ukraine in 2016, and we were threatened with nail bombs and excrement thrown at marchers. It's a very difficult thing to stand up for, and I think, you know, at any point in Ukraine, but when it's being threatened by Russia, I think those are incredibly brave people.
All right,
fighting for their country and for their identity, and Europe should be proud of them.
OK, all right, Aman, I'll go to you now.
My Greatest Britain is an honorary one. Well, it's a joint one this time. It's my go overseas again. It is Team Melody, which is Georgia Maloney and Prime Minister Modi. She tweeted it from the G7 this week. And the fact is, two great conservative right-wing leaders who are enthusing people and winning when it matters. And that's what we need here in the UK.
All right, now, Carol...
I found myself, I've recovered. Okay.
Good.
It was just after that football stuff. Anyway, my Greatest Britain is the Princess of Wales. It was great to see Kate out the weekend on Saturday.
Yes.
She's been out of the public eye now for 173 days. We've missed her hugely. The royal family is just less colourful without her. So it was really good to see her. She would normally be at Ascot this next week she'd normally be doing other things. She's only turned out because her and Charles now have the shared bond because of their shared health problems. So it was fantastic to see her.
No, I agree completely. And it will come as no shock to anyone to know that today's greatest Britain is the Princess of Wales. Well done, Kate. Fantastic to see you on the balcony. And actually, as well, I thought looking radiant, which, considering everything that's going on, is no mean feat. It's time now for Union Jackass. Are you ready, Carol?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Go on.
Mine was that cruel and sadistic police officer who rammed that poor calf, not a cow, a calf, 5 times. Those pictures made me physically ill when I saw them on Friday. You know, we had young Kai on earlier saying that the calf wasn't causing uproar to anyone. And, you know, Surrey police are already, you can tell they're getting the defence. Their first call, they said that a calf had been hit. They didn't say it was by them, actually. But anyway, so they can say they're getting their defence ready. That officer should not be let near anyone ever again. He's not, because, you know, he's just not, if he does that to a cow, what's he going to do to people? It's not right.
Well, OK. I mean, it's, I think at this point I will say that the police officer is not here to defend himself.
No, but,
I know you don't care, but I know some people who work in an office called Ofcom who might. And I'm just going to say that it's under investigation, although Carol's views are shared by many. Yeah. Right, Benjamin, OK.
My jackass is Noel Edmonds off of Mr Blobby for saying that Ed Balls was fatter than Mr Blobby on breakfast television.
Right.
Well, that's also what a lot of people are thinking.
You woke up this morning and you thought... You know,
that's what kept you awake, Benjamin.
That's what got me going today, yeah.
I thought it was divine justice, really, but anyway.
OK, no, fair enough. We can't have fat-shaming on television. Right, man, who's your Union Jackass?
I think I go overseas again this time. This so-called failing leader of the free world, Joe Biden. I think it's about time they set him off in the sunset.
OK, I think we've got a clip. Of Jeff. It's not great, is it? OK, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Surrey Police. So it's a double win. Double win for Carol Malone.
I put in the 2 same nominations.
As did I.
Excuse me, you didn't put them in before me. I was up.
It's a joint win.
Get a life, Carol.
No, get a life.
OK. Thank you very much, everybody, who's been watching and tuning in. Thank you. Headliners are up next for a much more detailed look at tomorrow's newspapers for you. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Until then, keep fighting the good fight.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It will be another bright start to Tuesday. However, it's going to cloud over through the day and there's a risk of some pretty heavy showers once again. Low pressure still quite close to northern areas, so that's bringing that shower risk, particularly across the north and east through today, but that shower risk will move over to the northwest through tomorrow. So a few showers still to come for eastern Scotland through tonight as well. It will remain fairly cloudy and drizzly across northern areas of Scotland, but elsewhere for the rest of the UK, it'll be a clear and dry night with the risk of some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning and temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees for most towns and cities. So bright start to the day on Tuesday, potentially a bit of mist and fog around, but it's the far north of Scotland that's going to see the cloudiest of skies, and with that northerly wind it's going to be feeling not a lot like summer at all. 11 or 12 degrees at best, 9 degrees for some of us and some quite persistent drizzly rain. Now temperatures rise as we head further south with more in the way of sunshine to start the day. As I said, there is a chance of some mist and fog, and notice this massive rain over the near continent. That will start to approach from the south and east through Tuesday lunchtime, and we could see some heavy rain across parts of Kent and Sussex and then towards